Welcome to episode 450. Have you been feeling less drawn to hustle, productivity, and constant striving, and more drawn to simplicity, connection, and a slower rhythm of life? In this episode, I explore the idea of the feminine fire within through an Ayurvedic lens, and how reducing excess rajas, the energy of doing, may help us reconnect with intuition, creativity, community, and a more nourishing way of living. Welcome to the Elements of Ayurveda podcast. I'm your host, Colette. And if you're new to Ayurveda, I recommend starting with the first few episodes where I introduce the foundations of Ayurveda and the doshas. To learn more, work with me, or explore my offerings, you can visit elementshealingandwellbeing.com. And for podcast updates, join me on Instagram at Elements of AyurvedaPodcast. And before we begin, just a quick note to say that this podcast is for educational and inspirational purposes only. It's not intended as medical advice. Now let's dive into this episode. Hey there, and welcome back to the podcast. It's Colette for a solo episode today. And recently, I was listening to an intuitive speaker talking about what he called the rising of feminine fire. Now, he wasn't speaking about women versus men, but rather the feminine energy and the masculine energies that exist within all of us. He described feminine energy as community-oriented, intuitive, creative, nurturing, sustainable, and deeply connected to nature. As I listened, I found myself reflecting on how much this aligns with what Ayurveda has thought for thousands of years. It also resonated with something I have been noticing in my own life. Over the last few years, I've felt less drawn to constant activity and more drawn inward. I'm less interested in being busy for the sake of being busy and more interested in how I feel. And I'm paying greater attention to where my energy goes, what nourishes me, and what depletes me. I find myself craving a simpler rhythm of life, waking early, spending time in nature, having meaningful conversations, and enjoying quiet evenings. Really looking after my health and well-being, conserving my energy rather than constantly spending it. And there's this growing desire for community and connection with like-minded people. I'm not talking about networking or collecting followers, but genuine connection. People who value conscious living, personal growth, and a deeper relationship with themselves and the world around them. As I reflected on all of this, I began wondering whether many of us are feeling something similar. Perhaps we're reaching a point where striving, optimizing, and constantly pushing forward no longer feels fulfilling. Perhaps we're craving a more nourishing way of living. And maybe this is what the rising feminine fire represents. It's not a rejection of masculine energy, but a rebalancing. Not doing less for the sake of doing less, but living in a way that feels more aligned, sustainable, and life-giving. And so in this episode, I'd like to explore this idea through an Ayurvedic lens. We'll look at how modern life may have dimmed this feminine fire, what Ayurveda can teach us about restoring balance, and some simple ways to rekindle this fire within ourselves. One of the things I find fascinating about modern wellness culture is how much emphasis is placed on optimization. We're encouraged to optimize our sleep, our exercise, productivity, nutrition, and even our leisure time. I discussed this in detail in my previous episode 449, Letting Go of Optimization, Returning to Body Wisdom. Now, as I said in that episode, there is nothing wrong with wanting to improve your health and make positive changes. Ayurveda itself encourages us to cultivate habits that support well-being. But sometimes I wonder whether the pursuit of optimization can become another form of striving. another project to manage, another standard to meet, and another way of feeling we're not quite enough as we are. From an Ayurvedic perspective, we might view this through the lens of rajas. Rajas is the quality of movement, activity, and stimulation. And we need it. Without rajas, we would not take any action or pursue goals or create positive change. It's the spark that lights the fire of motivation. The challenge comes when rajas dominates our lives, when we're constantly busy, consuming information nonstop, always planning the next thing, and focused on doing rather than being. When rajas becomes excessive, it doesn't just affect what we do, it affects how we think and how we perceive the world. The rajasic mind is constantly moving. It jumps from one thought to the next, one task to the next, and one goal to the next. It can become impatient, reactive, and easily distracted. There is often a feeling that we should be doing something, fixing something, or getting somewhere else. Even when we're sitting still, the mind can remain busy. You may recognize this as scrolling while watching TV, listening to a podcast while answering emails, or finding it difficult to simply rest without reaching for your phone. Excess rajas can also fuel comparison, perfectionism, and the feeling that we're somehow falling behind. It keeps our attention focused on what is next rather than what is here. Over time, this constant mental activity can make it difficult to access some of the qualities we often associate with feminine energy, such as intuition, creativity, presence, and receptivity. Not because those qualities disappear, but because they become harder to hear beneath all the noise. In Ayurveda, a balanced mind is sattvic. Sattva brings clarity, contentment, wisdom, and the ability to see things as they are. When we are in a sattvic state, we are better able to hear our inner guidance, make conscious choices, and feel connected to ourselves and others. So perhaps part of rekindling the feminine fire is not creating more energy or doing more practices. Perhaps it's reducing some of the excess rajas in our lives so that the qualities that are already within us have space to emerge. This excess activity often aggravates vata, creating a sense of nervous system depletion that has become incredibly common in modern life. Many people feel tired but wired, restless yet exhausted, and mentally overstimulated but disconnected from their own intuition. And perhaps most significantly, disconnected from natural rhythms. One of the things Ayurveda continually reminds us is that we are a part of nature. We are not separate from it. The same intelligence that moves the seasons, guides the migration of birds, and helps plants know when to flower also exists within us. Yet many of us spend most of our days indoors, under artificial light, moving according to schedules rather than natural rhythms. We wait to alarms, eat while multitasking, work through fatigue, push through signals from the body, then wonder why we feel disconnected. Ayurveda offers a different perspective. Rather than asking us to dominate nature, it encourages us to participate in it. Instead of controlling every aspect of life, it encourages us to develop a relationship with life. And relationship is a word that keeps coming to mind when I think about feminine energy. Relationship with ourselves, with our community, with nature, and with our own true nature. I certainly see this desire for relationship emerging in my own life. As I become more intentional about where I place my energy, I've also become increasingly aware of how important community is. We often think of health as something we do alone, but human beings are relational by nature. We need meaningful conversations and support. We need spaces where we can share experiences, ask questions, and learn from one another. I believe this is one of the reasons so many people are feeling drawn toward community right now. Not because they need more information, but because they are seeking connection. And that's actually one of the reasons I created the Elements of Ayurveda podcast community. Over the years, listeners from all around the world have reached out to tell me that they love Ayurveda, but often find they don't have anyone in their day-to-day lives who shares the same interests. They want a space where they can continue the conversation, ask questions, learn together, and connect with others on a similar path. Now, if that's something you've been longing for, I welcome you to join the community. Because while Ayurveda certainly values individual responsibility, it also recognizes the healing power of connection and shared wisdom. And I'll share the link in the show notes if you're interested in finding out more about the podcast community. And then you can come join our live monthly Zooms where we get to see each other face to face. So how do we begin to rekindle the feminine fire? Well, it's certainly not by adding more to our to-do list or by turning it into another self-improvement project, but by creating conditions that allow it to naturally emerge. I've been reflecting on what this looks like in practice, and a few themes keep appearing. First of all, spending more time in nature is one of the simplest ways to reconnect, because nature naturally draws us out of our heads and back into our senses. It reminds us that there's life beyond our screens and that life moves in cycles and rhythms rather than constant forward momentum. It's also important to create moments of quiet throughout our day. And for me, I found myself wanting to stay away from the constant news feed. And so now in the evening, I'm listening to music while I'm doing some foam rolling or stretching. Or perhaps for you, it's creativity that does not need to be a productive outcome, but just for fun and relaxation. What I'm suggesting here is just taking some time at the end of the day to soothe your senses after all the day's inputs and reducing the noise and stimulation before you go to bed, allowing time for your nervous system to unwind. It's important to honor natural rhythms of activity and rest, choosing nourishment over achievement when possible by listening to the body instead of constantly overriding it, trusting intuition alongside intellect, and prioritizing meaningful relationships. None of these practices are particularly complicated. In fact, they are very simple, yet they often require us to move against the momentum of modern culture. As we come to the end of this episode, I'd like to return to the image of the fire. I don't believe the feminine fire within us has disappeared. I think for many of us, it has simply been overshadowed by noise, busyness, overstimulation, comparison, and the belief that our worth is connected to how much we accomplish. Beneath all of that, the fire is still there. The fire of creativity, of intuition, of connection and vitality. The fire of knowing who we are beneath the roles, the expectations, and the endless demands of modern life. Perhaps what many of us are experiencing right now is not a call to become more efficient, but a call to become more present, connected, intentional, and more fully alive. And from an Ayurvedic perspective, that may be one of the most healing journeys we can take. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you noticed a craving for a simpler rhythm of life? Please share it with me in the podcast community or on social media. You can find me on Instagram under Elements of Ayurveda Podcast, and on Facebook, it's Elements Healing and Wellbeing. And if you would like support on your journey with Ayurveda, then check out my online consultations, the Digestive Reset Cleanse, and my other offerings on my website, elementshealingandwellbeing.com. And don't forget to follow or subscribe to the podcast so that the new episodes automatically download for you. And if you'd like to leave a rating or review, if you feel like you're getting benefit from this podcast, I would deeply appreciate it. And until next time, take good care of yourself, be well, and bye for now. Slán go fóill.